Today, we wake up fresh and energized here at the 4 Points Hotel in Mississauga, Ontario. We're ready to continue on today's journey, which will head north. Let's step outside the hotel and into the parking lot. And, well, I might have thought of this.
It's actually pretty cold because of the lake effect. I think the lake effect has caused it to become pretty cold, along with the fact that I'm wearing a t-shirt.
So, today we're going to be going to the Bruce Peninsula National Park, along with Fathom Five. What's there? As you can see later in this video, a lot is there. We inhale a load of this fresh air here at the parking lot of the hotel. As we prepare to leave the hotel for the Bruce Peninsula, we see this plane taking off from the nearby airport. This is something that I anticipated when I found out about this hotel's proximity to the airport. Alright, now let's get going. We're about to head into a rural area. However, you can barely tell when you look at where we're driving initially. It seems like a massive residential/industrial area here in the roads of Mississauga. Today's a pretty sleepy day in terms of traffic. Well, that makes sense since everybody was partying hard yesterday. Canada Day, after all. Okay, let's get on Ontario 410. This is the road that shall catapult us north toward Highway 6, which is the main road of the Bruce Peninsula. And it's a relatively smooth drive for the first part of the journey, actually. In the drive there, I didn't record much. Probably because I didn't know what would happen later. Oh, and what I said earlier about the sleepy traffic, forget it. Actually, after we're going for a while, it doesn't seem so bad. After doing a bit of driving here and there, we notice that we pretty much have the road all to ourselves. Here, we make a left turn. We enter this residential area somewhere near Brampton, Ontario. And it's a pretty good looking small town. Is it a town, village, or city? I really don't know since I didn't study like Canadian geography or anything. But there's a lot of stores and it looks pretty self-sustainable. Okay, on we go. We drive through a bunch of rural areas of the Bruce Peninsula, and then it started raining. The sky was switching between blue, gray, cloudy, and whatever throughout this entire journey. Here we are, somewhere near Shallow Lake, Ontario. We passed by the Northern Dunes Golf Club, and it seems like a good place to play golf. We passed by a vast expanse of forests and farms. What happened here, a forest fire? Something interesting as we were driving throughout the entire journey is that we saw farm animals pretty much the whole way, just a bunch of farm animals. Look at this. No matter where you go in Ontario, there's always these signs pointing tourists to where they should spend their time, including farms like this one. It seems to have a lot of visitors. Cotton-shaped clouds tumble along the wilderness as we drive along Highway 6, which is the road that will take us toward Tobermory, Ontario. Great places are ahead of us. Highway 6 is a great road to drive along. Look, more farm animals. Excuse me, but is there anything other than farm animals? Did you hear my request? Yes, apparently there is. There is a lot of stuff to see along this empty but magnificent road. Look at this car, it has the Canadian flag on it to celebrate the National Day of Canada. And now how exactly did I get the ability to stop time? You see that yellow stuff in the distance? Yeah, this yellow stuff. This is a plant called rape. Did you know your vegetable oil comes from this? It's true, look up how vegetable oil is made. After we pass by more fields of this stuff, we begin to wonder what other stuff is made in Ontario. Apparently also maple syrup. By the way, I've tried some just now, and it's really good. And it looks like we're here at the Bruce Peninsula National Park. However, we come across a huge disappointment.
Apparently the parking lots are full and all the tickets are sold out, so we'll have to redirect ourselves to Fathom Five, if there's any room there.
Okay, so here's our plan. We're going to head down Cheeson Tip Deck Road. and we're going to turn left and head over to the Parks Canada Visitor Center, where we'll continue to our next journey. Let's pull over and park here. We've successfully followed Cheese and Tip Road, and we've successfully parked here. And I managed to get this amazing shot of the leaves and stuff. It would make a really good thumbnail, don't you think? Here's a little bit of what I have in mind. I'm going to use this picture for a decent thumbnail for the video. Check it out. What do you think? This is called Thumbnails 101. Seriously, take a good picture, put some text on it, and bam. Here we are, stopped along the park boundary as we look here into the woods. Okay, let's get going. Over to the visitor center. This area is very satisfying to walk along, by the way. Onward! We walk along this area where people park. And yes, we're almost there at the visitor center. We see this map of the trails that we take a look at later in the video. We walk around this corner and we eventually reach the great visitor center of the Fathom Five National Marine Park. And here we are, inside the visitor center. At first it seemed like a tourist trap, but it turns out it's a great place to rest your legs. Especially when Mother Nature is bearing down on you. That's a story for another time though. We can see these signs depicting the wildlife that lives here. And by the way, most of the signs here are bilingual, if you can't tell already. I feel this visitor center is mostly geared toward younger children, but I still find it very interesting. Look at the lights up here. They're very interesting too. We record a couple more aspects of this visitor center before we get going. At that time, I didn't think we would set foot within the visitor center again, but oh, I was wrong. Just like I can't predict the weather. Okay, let's get going now. We walk outside the doors of the visitor center before we set out upon the trails. I noticed something interesting about the map of the area.
This looks a lot like the Welsh flag.
Let's set out and get going upon this trail. The temperature is just right for a nice walk along this trail. It is neither too hot or too cold, and it's pretty sunny too. And it doesn't really put much stress on your legs either. It's perfect for a walk. It seems that we're walking the correct path for a while until we end up on one of the main roads. There are sidewalks and everything. This doesn't seem much like a nature hike / trail / whatever it is. We eventually make our way back onto the trail by retracing our steps and continuing back to where we've been. By the way, along the trail there's a lot of great stuff, enabling it to take a bunch of great photos. Soon, we come across this tower, which we shall ascend. And undeniably, it feels higher than it actually is, and I can attest to that.
Do not watch this part if you have a fear of heights.
And no, I didn't look down or over the edge often, I just couldn't bring myself to do it. The ascent becomes harder and harder as we get higher and higher. When we approach this height, the tower begins to seem wobbly. Just imagine what it's like in the winter with the lake effect snow and the lake effect wind. Even though you try to restrain yourself from looking down, you always feel somehow a strong compulsion to do so. The wind begins to add to the suspense as we ascend upon these heights.
Don't look down. You look down for me. Do you regret looking down?
You should just really take a good look and really absorb what it was like at that point, at that moment in time, at that place.
My legs were shaking. I was sweating. I didn't dare look down. When I did, I instantly regretted it. I can barely record this right now.
Seriously, my hands were shaking. I had to edit these clips just to ensure that I wouldn't shake.
Welcome to the Fathom Five National Marine Park.
There's this telescope thing that you can look through, but I can't really show you with a camera, but it's supposed to point at some feature from history. It's a really cool landscape, don't you think? It's a bit of a contrast to the Toronto skyline from yesterday. It's worth taking a million pictures of if you had the time, although in a different aspect. You feel the relaxing winds gently blowing along you as you truly absorb the scenery of this place. Look over there, the Lake Huron in the distance. I wish we actually did have the time to take a million photos. Actually, that's sort of encompassed within the video. Check out this ant crawling along the railing. And yes, you do take a lot of photos by recording a video. A video is a bunch of photos being put together and played back really fast. Look at this example. You can see this video being broken down into its individual frames as the ant begins to crawl. Actually, it sort of makes you appreciate how fast an ant moves. Each one of these frames, its legs seems to be in a different place. And this video was taken at 30 frames per second. And when you play back each of these frames just a bit faster, what you get is a video. And that is how video cameras work in a nutshell. However, that's not the point. The scenery is the point. Check this out. It seems like an infinite expanse of trees stretching out into the distance. And yes, in this clip alone, at least a couple hundred pictures were taken. So yeah, if you added up the total number of scenic pictures in this video, it would probably add up to over 1 million. I don't know. Look how many cars were parked here. We're lucky to even get a spot. And look at Lake Huron in the distance. It is truly an amazing sight to behold. We take one last look at the scenic landscape before continuing down. It makes your heart race nearly as much as the ascent, but this time you're sort of prepared. Once we're down, we continue walking back on the trail. We certainly get the feel of the wilderness here as we walk along this roughly defined trail. I feel this part doesn't really need much narration. Just like Lake Skaneateles, it pretty much narrates itself. As we continue walking, we approach closer and closer to the shores of Lake Huron. You can sort of tell since it starts to get sandy in the area.
This is Lake Huron.
Needless to say, we must go down there somehow, even if there's no trail. Let's walk through this narrow corridor and into the lake.
Welcome to Lake Huron.
Indeed, this is one of my first times in the Great Lakes.
Welcome to Lake Huron.
I inserted some beautiful flowing piano music to resemble how the lake feels. Okay, let's get back.
It looks like amazing scenery here.
We continue. The trail seems beautiful as ever, but something feels different. As I take some photos of this amazing landscape, I begin to realize that although the rays of the sun still penetrate through the clouds, it seems slightly more gloomy, slightly more muggy. I don't know how to describe it, but it just seems different. Forget about that. Let's just enjoy Lake Huron from a different viewing point. And yes, the Great Lake is more beautiful than ever before. And look at those people swimming there. They have no idea what's about to come. I don't blame them. We can't predict the weather. Do you think this picture could be on the cover of a magazine? It really captures Lake Huron well. The sky darkens. However, the water becomes more and more beautiful. This lake narrates itself really well. We stop to read this sign about visually drinking in the beauty of this lake. And this one about the golden history of this lakeshore, literally. We also come across this sign about the geography of the Little Dunks Bay, which is the area we're looking at. We also read these signs about the Native American history of the region. Hundreds of years ago, the early people here gazed upon this bay just like we are doing now. We're talking about long before Canada was British or French. I almost want to stay there forever, but unfortunately, Mother Nature forced us out.
It is raining.
Soon, this rain evolved from a peaceful drizzle to a powerful storm. And soon, this storm grew into hail. Within a little bit, pretty much everything we had was soaked. Do you recognize this clip from the intro?
Huh?
It's really tough. What do we do? Well, the only reasonable thing to do is to make a break for it. We need to head back to the visitor center, where we will be sheltered. That's a good chance to get to know the region anyway. So let's go.
Now that was the first time I've seen it hailing in July.
As we dry off in the visitor center, we check out this museum thing about the history and the geography of the region. Okay, I believe it's safe to say that we should return to the hotel now after more than a day's worth of venturing. However, we're just gonna do a little slower. We get off Highway 6 here at Wyerton. We check out the Wyerton Marina for scenery of the lake, or more specifically, the Georgian Bay. It is absolutely beautiful after the storm. Check out all the boats in the water, all lined up perfectly along the docks. Could it be better? It feels so relaxing with the gentle winds blowing along from the lake effect. Let's keep going. We come across this nearby candy shop. The particular thing that's of interest in this shop is the ice cream and the maple syrup. One of the many things Canada is famous for is its huge selection of maple syrup. A whopping 80% of the world's maple syrup is made in Canada. Okay, let's get settled here. Look at the wide selection of stuff that is in this store. I mean, I love large chain stores and all, but smaller stores in rural areas like this one is what truly makes the best.
We got some Canadian ice cream. They gave me a lot. Let's enjoy this ice cream then. I got maple, walnut, chocolate, and peanut butter.
Let's just let it sit for a moment before we dig in. Let's take some more shots to remember this candy store before we get going again. Along the road, the camera broke, probably because it was raining so hard. Anyway, on the way back to Mississauga, we stopped at Basilica of Our Lady in Guelph, Ontario. It is truly beautiful to behold from below. And yes, although it didn't have video, a photo is enough to truly capture it.
Quick update here, when we were on Highway 6, the camera died, and I essentially ended up having to pass through a lot of scenic places without recording anything. However, when I returned to the hotel, as you can see here, I googled how to fix it, and I managed to do so. And that's how I'm recording this right now. We're heading over to North York, Toronto for dinner.
The day's not over yet. We drive east on Ontario 401 toward Toronto. And I like how the way the highway is lit up at night. It's pretty cool. We get off the highway and we end up here on Yonge Street, one of the most important roads of Toronto.
We currently drive along Yonge Street.
And yes, the city has definitely not gone to sleep. The traffic is quite slow, but it's fine. Now let's get off and take a walk along the famous Yonge Street. Oh, and by the way, I heard that the public transportation of Toronto is amazing. However, we never got the chance to go on it. You know what? Let's head to a nearby Walmart to pick up some snacks for the road tomorrow.
Canadian Walmart.
It looks very Walmart-y, just like in the United States. But here's the thought. We've been in a rural store and a chain store in the same day. Will you look at that? Look at this sign advertising Walmart.ca. It looks just like any Walmart in the US, and even the products they offer are similar to that of the US.
I don't know why I'm so amazed at something that I can find outside my back door.
And we have dinner at an amazing Chinese place called Hey Noodles. And the stuff here is very authentic, closely resembles Central Chinese cuisine. It's certainly a very pleasing way to end a long day at the Bruce Peninsula. Ah, yes. And then we head back to the hotel to get ourselves a good night's sleep.